Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's now time for the Pony Cake Sports Podcast with your hosts, Josh Stevens, Tim Thompson, and Tom Schultz. Woo!
Hey there, everybody. We are back with another episode. And as always, I am joined by Tim and Tom. Tim, I am glad you could finally join us this week. And Tom, you're here as always. So how we doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm glad to be back. You know, sometimes life gets in the way, and finally I punched life right in the scrotum and said, no, I need to get back to my friends at the Pony Cake Sports Podcast.
Great to be back. It's kind of weird, the three of us being reunited. We wasted about 3 hours kind of just messing around, talking, catching up a little bit, watching some awesome Baker Mayfield highlights running from the cops. Looked like he ran like a 7.440.
At least, yeah.
How someone didn't just have a YouTube video that just says Baker Mayfield 2018 Combine and then cut to that video, I have no idea. First time I saw it. Makes me like him a little bit more.
I can't believe you haven't seen that before.
No, never saw that one.
Yeah, it's a great video. Can't complain.
What are we talking about today, Josh? Mike Evans?
We're talking about, Mike Evans. We're talking about our newly installed segment that we're going to be doing. And Tom, that is, again, what?
It is keep, cut, and trade.
For the record, last year, I brought this idea up to you guys as a segment.
I don't think you did.
And it was poo-pooed. It was poo-pooed. And now, you guys, I take a week off. I come back. And now it's here, and Josh is stroking Tom, saying, good idea, pal. Unbelievable.
I wrote it down in a notebook. I was like, bring up a year from this day.
Absolutely unbelievable.
No one else will remember.
We'll just tell stupid Tim he's a liar, and I will get all the credit in the world.
I don't remember you ever bringing that up.
I don't either. You might have.
But this time we are going to be talking about wide receivers. And it is not Mike Evans. It is going to be Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, and Julio Jones. Three guys that are all getting drafted kind of around the same place. Julio Jones right now is getting drafted as the fourth wide receiver, second round, pick number 2. Michael Thomas, fifth wide receiver, third overall in the second round. And Keenan Allen, sixth wide receiver, so 4, 5, and 6. And again, one spot right after that. Again, we are pulling all of our ADP information from Fantasy Football Calculator until we get all of our rankings actually put together, so we can actually give you guys a little bit of our own rankings that we do have. But for right now, we're going off of fantasyfootballcalculator.com. So let's go ahead and kick it off. Who wants to start?
I'll go first. I'm going to pick the guy who has the best Twitter handle out of anyone in the NFL right now, and that is Can't Guard Michael Thomas of the Saints. You know, he's my favorite out of these three wide receivers. All three of these wide receivers, though, all of them have shown the ability to be a top 5 option. All proven that they can be game changers, fantasy football, and in the real NFL games. All three of them were top 7 options last year in the NFL. For me, though, Michael Thomas, he's got the highest fantasy floor out of these three. PPR leagues last season, he had 14 games scoring double-figure points and 9 over 15 points per game. That is what I call a fantasy floor. When I'm drafting a wide receiver that early, I want to know that I could just count for 10-plus points each game, and that's pretty much what Mike Thomas does for you. Since he's gotten the NFL, since 2016, only one receiver has scored more fantasy football points. That's the great Antonio Brown. He's been one of the most consistent options, and we haven't even seen him get that peak level of performance. Have you guys seen him lately, how jacked he is right now? He kind of makes Josh Gordon look tiny out there.
Kind of.
I'm excited about Mike Thomas, what he can do, and you got to look kind of outside the box. When I'm trying to rank wide receivers, you got to think of who's throwing them the football. He's got Drew Brees, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, one of the most consistent quarterbacks of all time. This New Orleans Saints offense, it's been a juggernaut since 2006. It's going to keep rolling, and Mike Thomas is going to be getting the biggest piece of the pie out of any pass-catching option for the Saints this year. That is why I would be keeping him this year.
I will hop on. Thank you, Tom, for introducing me to this segment. I was unfamiliar with how it worked, since it is new to me. With that being said,
if you would have listened to last week's episode, you would understand the flow.
I don't have to listen. I created it. God damn it. I want to say that I do not like Ohio State University, but I am right there with you, Tom. My keep is Michael Thomas.
Wow.
Yes, I know.
We definitely did not like that.
I'm sure you didn't, but it's a no-brainer to me. The fear going into last year that maybe, held some people in check was a second-year guy losing his partner in crime, Brandon Cooks. How's he going to perform? If you listen to Pony Keg Sports, you know the addition of Ted Ginn Jr. was big for the New Orleans Saints. Michael Thomas went out there and absolutely dominated fools. 104 receptions, over 1,200 yards, only 5 touchdowns, but that's because of the big year of the two-headed monster at running back. But I absolutely love Michael Thomas. I think that he is by far and away the best wide receiver to draft out of these three in terms any type of league, dynasty league, keepers league, or just a complete redraft. He's young enough. He still has Drew Brees, like you said, and he's going to consistently put up good fantasy numbers. He doesn't necessarily have the blow-up game capability as a Julio Jones, as an Antonio Brown, but he's still very, very good, and just proof that, you know what, the first-round wide receivers sometimes don't pan out. The second-round guys like Michael Thomas sometimes pan out for the best. Drafted 47th overall in 2016.
Michael Thomas is a monster. Obviously, we all know that. He only had 100 yards receiving, or more than 100 yards receiving twice last year. Only 2 games under 10 points, which is very, very reliable. He's your Mr. Reliable wide receiver. My keep that I'm going to go with, though, is going to be Keenan Allen. Yes, Keenan Allen, the same Keenan Allen that has missed 23 games due to injury. Yes, Mr. Allen, who could go down at any point in time with an ACL injury, but he did finish 3rd overall last year in PPR. 3rd overall, right behind Antonio Brown and DeAndre Hopkins. He had 7 games of 100 yards or more receiving. Only 3 games under 10 points. But he also has those games of 40 points and 35 points and 35 points to where he does blow up during games as well. So Keenan Allen for me is going to be my keep. I also don't think that the trade market for Keenan Allen would be there as much as the other two. So that's why Keenan Allen would be a keep for me. And in my opinion, a trade, if you're going to try to get the most out of any player, value-wise, it's going to be probably Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas is a young guy. You could trade him for a lot of assets in a dynasty league, probably a first-round pick next year and probably some other good value pieces. But you're probably getting your best bet right there, trading Michael Thomas, best return right now and keeping Keenan Allen.
Yeah, for me, if I was trading, it'd be Julio. This would be mainly just me thinking of redraft leagues right now. Because currently in PPR leagues, he's being drafted the highest out of the 3. Yeah, it's kind of right in a row. All 3 of them are kind of going like 2-2, 2-3, 2-4, somewhere around there. So in a redraft, you're going to have this issue. Which one of these 3 guys do you pick? And it is going to be a tough choice. But for me, Julio Jones, he still has that name. He's been around the league for a long time. He's got 4 straight years being a top 7 fantasy wide receiver. That is extremely impressive. Last season, there wasn't a lot to dislike about Julio. 13 games, over 10 points. Only had 6, though, over 15 points. Kind of that boomer bust option. Had that 50 burger he dropped. It kind of seems like every year he's got 1 or 2 of those just monster games, and everything else is just kind of iffy. It's just a lot of peaks and valleys with Julio Jones, and that's what I dislike about him. I've had him last few years multiple times, and it gets frustrating to spend an early round pick on a guy when you're expecting to get high return in value, and you're only seeing the return in value 2 or 3 games per year. But for me, I think I could get the most out of Julio if I was dealing him right now.
Tom Quintorris Lopez Jones, better known to people out there as Julio Jones, is the best trade option here. I agree with you 100%. We are on the same page today. Listen, fantasy football is not necessarily about, you have to be smart yourself, you have to make the right moves yourself, but it's also about being smarter than other people in your league. Julio Jones has the name value. You can probably trade a Julio Jones for a top 15 running back. You could trade Julio Jones for far more than I think you could. I like Michael Thomas more, but I don't think at least 4 to 6 other teams in my league will take a Michael Thomas over a Julio Jones because they're just not very smart. Only 3 touchdowns last year. He has a monster ceiling, but like Tom mentioned, it is very frustrating to own him at times. Not to mention, they bring in another Alabama wide receiver this year in Calvin Ridley, which Julio was not happy about whatsoever. They still have Tevin Coleman for at least another year. They have Devonta Freeman. They have Austin Hooper's finally getting a little bit of love there from Matt Ryan. They have other pieces. So, I love Julio Jones, but it's more of he's prettier than he is, that his name is pretty. His results, not so much. I'm not the biggest fan. Trade him.
So, you guys, I'm going to my cut right now. Obviously, my trade would be, like I just said, would be Michael Thomas. But Julio Jones, everything Tim just said is the reason why I'm cutting Julio Jones and I'm trading Michael Thomas. Again, with all those extra guys there, again, they added a wide receiver in this draft. They have Mohamed Sanu. They have the emergence of Austin Hooper. They have 2 running backs that can catch the football and run the football out of the backfield. That reason alone, I see Julio's production dwindling a little bit. I don't see him being able to put up his 1,400 yards and 3 touchdowns and still ending up as the number 7 rated PPR wide receiver this year. I have him outside my top 10. I'm cutting him.
Listen, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying about.
Plus, and I know you guys' cut is going to be Keenan Allen, obviously. And the reason why Keenan Allen's my keep, which is what I already said, but added to that, you got to look at it. Who's not there anymore? Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry's gone.
Gates.
Antonio Gates is not there. Who's their starting tight end? Virgil Green. He's hot garbage.
I think
there are going to be a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, and Keenan Allen is going to command the ball a lot. That is why he's my keep. That is why I'm getting rid of Julio Jones.
To Tom and I's point, in terms of trade value, if you go through, which we've been doing a lot now, this is our 3rd year. Third year, doing our rankings and all that stuff for fantasy football. If you go through, you consistently see players that aren't that good but have bigger names or on bigger teams be higher up on that ADP list.
Yeah.
Just because a lot of fantasy football players are fucking dumb. That's why I'm hoping, hey, do you want Quintoris Lopez Jones? Do you? That's his name. That's his name. Do you want Quintoris Lopez Jones? And a lot of people will say, you know what, Tim? Yes, I do. Here's a bunch of players. More so than Michael Thomas. Even though Michael Thomas is the much more reliable wide receiver moving forward. Let's talk about our cut. I'll take the rope here. Tom and I both have Keenan Allen. He's going to be my cut strictly. Josh, you mentioned it in the reason why you're keeping him. I don't know what Keenan Allen we're getting. It's too random. You freaking roll the dice. And with my number 1 wide receiver, if I'm taking, especially if I had to take a running back, in the first round, and now I'm taking a wide receiver in the second, I don't want someone that I have to wonder, well, what are they going to do? Add that along with his freaking Amish beard, just kind of freaks me out a little bit. I'm not a big fan of that.
I'm going to draft a team only players that have beards. I don't know what league it's going to be.
Now.
But it's going to be a league where that's all that they have.
As someone who can only grow pubic hair on his face, I am truly offended by that sentiment. But, listen, Keenan Allen's a stud. If he can stay on the field, Josh, I agree with you. I love it. If he is my, if I somehow nab him at the very end of the second round when I got kind of a sweeper pick, like at 11 or 12 to sweep around, right around, then okay. But in terms of if it's early in the second round, early mid-second round where these guys are going, there's no doubt that he's last on my list. He is. And if I have to cut one of them, sorry, Beardy boy. You take your hobbly ass to the bench. I'm cutting you.
At first, for me, when we went over, or when we decided these were the 3 guys we were going over, I thought it would be extremely easy. And kind of what I have now is what I originally thought. But then kind of diving into Keenan Allen, looking at some of those game logs, looking at some of the performances that dude put on the field and on tape last season, I was starting to reconsider switching him as my keep and trading Michael Thomas, kind of like Josh did. But that'd be more of like in a dynasty league. Right now in a dynasty league, you could probably get a lot more for Michael Thomas than Julio, mainly because Julio Jones is 29 and Mike Thomas is still in his prime. I think he's 25, but Keenan Allen's only 26 as well. But last season, that was Keenan Allen's best career year.
Yeah.
First time he's played in all 16 regular season games. That's not something I like personally. That's something that should kind of scare you away, and that might be a reason why he's not being taken as a top 5 wide receiver. A lot of people remember that he has been hurt a lot, even though a lot of those injuries have been kind of fluky. But last year, you really got to see the chemistry that Pip Rivers and Keenan Allen had together. 13 games over 10 fantasy points, 7 games over 15 points. Pretty good fantasy floor right there. And Josh, you brought it up with Hunter Henry, Antonio Gates being gone. Keenan Allen's going to be a target hog next year, just like he was this year. Close to 10 targets a game. I think he had over 100 receptions. But he's just a complete stud when he is healthy. But that's just the issue, when he's healthy.
Keenan Allen had 102 receptions last year, 3 games of 10 receptions or more, which is just behind Antonio Brown's, I think 6 games of 10 receptions or more, and actually more than DeAndre Hopkins, and just behind Larry Fitzgerald with 10 receptions per game.
That's my other reasoning behind Keenan Allen is the quarterback. You hear all the time, hey, when is Ben Roethlisberger going to fall off? He's at the end of the road. When's Eli going to fall off? He's at the end of the road. I realize Drew Brees is older than Pip Rivers, but when is Pip Rivers going to fall off? The dude's got 36 kids now. He has to be tired. He has to be worn out. He had a lot of years there in San Diego where he was beat up, roughed up. When's he going to have his dive? Last year was the first year through his entire career where I was completely behind Phillip Rivers throughout. I think that was the best. I don't know if statistically it was, but in my eyes, just from the eye test, that was his best season ever. If he can have another one like that, it's hard to steer away from a healthy Keenan Allen.
Anything else?
That's all I got.
Tim?
So my and Tom's keep were Michael Thomas, cut Keenan Allen, and trade Julio Jones. I'll give him his real name for now. And Josh, you had keep Keenan Allen, or keep Michael Thomas.
Keep Keenan Allen.
Trade Michael Thomas.
Trade Michael Thomas.
Jones.
Yeah.
Very interesting. That's a tough one. Julio Jones is just one of those names it's hard to steer away from. You always see Julio Jones going at the end of the first round.
Oh, yeah.
Always.
And actually, just to kind of give you an idea, none of the numbers that Phillip Rivers had last year were his top numbers. For completions, pass attempts, completion percentage, yards average, or touchdowns.
Maybe it's just best overall season, in terms of turnovers. He's always been a pretty big turnover machine.
Yeah.
I just think now, especially with the addition of Melvin Gordon, he's kind of a complete quarterback now. He has everything. He has a stud running back behind him and a fantastic defense on the other side of the ball for the first time in his career. So that helps me be a little bit more confident in what he's bringing to the table.
All right. That's all we have for you guys for this episode for the trade, cut, and keep.
Cut, trade.
Keep, cut, trade.
Say
Sorry,
it right.
is that the official?
Yeah.
Is that what you wrote down a year ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't write it down. I said it.
Keep, cut, trade episode for the wide receivers. Again, Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, and
Mike Evans?
Julio Jones. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and then be on the lookout for ADP talk for quarterbacks and tight ends this week as well. And again, happy 4th of July to everybody, right?
Did you say happy 4th of July? Is that how
Is that what it is?
Happy-
Celebrate 4th of July?
Happy, did you say happy?
I think so.
Happy 4th of
It
July?
just sounds like Happy Christmas to me.
Happy
it just
Christmas.
doesn't sound right.
Well, you're not going to say
Happy
Merry
Fourth-
4th
Happy
of July.
4th of July. More, better yet, happy birthday, Josh.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
How old are
Appreciate
you?
it.
How old are you gonna be?
32.
32.
Wow.
You old bastard.
Yeah, it's old.
Your testicles are just daily shriveling up into your insides.
Slowly.
Better start making those babies.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you next time.
Peace.